Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Francis Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Francis Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Dr. David Palmiter, who is a licensed and board-certified clinical psychologist, and he is the clinical director at the Chesapeake Center, which is one of the largest ADHD specialty clinics in the country. He's on the board of directors for CHADD, C-H-A-D-D, which is the National Support Association for ADHD, and a professor emeritus at Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He's past president of Pennsylvania Psychological Association and has dozens of publications, including 2 books on promoting resilience in youth. And he's completed hundreds of media projects for most international news organizations and has given over 200 training workshops for mental health professionals around the country. So if he's not an expert, I'm not sure who is. But in his personal time, David is married for 34 years, has 3 adult children, and is a rabid fan of both the Orioles and the Commanders, is a magician, and enjoys golfing, fishing, and low-stakes poker. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Francis. I'm delighted to be here.
It's like you say Orioles fan. My in-laws used to have season tickets. So we used to go to the Orioles games a lot with my little ones when they were really little. So we love those.
Painful experiences those years, but it's looking better now.
Yes, exactly. But it was still fun. It was still fun. My oldest, she was little then, would like pretend she was pitching because where we sat, it was so cute. She loved it.
Well, I'm in my 60s and I still do that.
Oh, there you go. So it's all fun. And then magician, I love that. We just watched the Magician's Elephant last night. I don't know if you've seen it. Probably not. If you have adult children, you probably don't watch the cartoony ones.
Magic in a lot of professional things that I do, including live podcasts. That's just my everyday with my little bit of money in it.
Wow.
It really is helpful in working with kids and teens, especially.
I'm sure, because it's a way to connect on their level, right?
Yep.
Which is so important, which I know it's so important as professionals to connect with our clients, especially the children, and having a way to connect, especially when we're on the older side, because they think we're all too old, right? And we don't know anything. So to have something cool, that is awesome.
Yeah, most kids are neutral or opposed to seeing a mental health professional. So it's really helpful to form those initial connections if they're smiling and laughing.
Yep, exactly. So like going into mental health, because that's like such a big thing right now, especially in America and with, post-COVID days, that it seems like a lot more is coming out. What are like some of the top myths and misunderstandings about mental health?
So, boy, there's so many, one is, I guess, that seeing a therapist suggests someone's crazy or weak or self-indulgent. And we don't think about that, about dentistry or chiropractic treatments or foot doctors, but we have this bias against brain, in Western cultures where we think that those things are true. I mean, imagine I had type 2 diabetes and I thought, well, this is just my body. That's just how my body is. I mean, not only will the diabetes ravage me, but it's going to put me in an early grave, as opposed to thinking of it as something inside me that attacks me with a specific attack profile that can absolutely be controlled and sometimes even reversed. So it's the same thing with mental health challenges, but we think about them as us. But, I'm a defect, so I dare not go expose my defect to somebody else unless I'm absolutely at the end of my rope.
Right. And we call it often the hidden disability, because people don't understand and don't see what's going on with behind, because a lot of people with mental health issues have learned to mask in society, in the classrooms, in society, and everything else. And in some cultures, it's very like taboo. I joke around, being a Jewish woman, that, you know, we're born with a Xanax prescription for anxiety. You know, it's just who we are. You know, like
Right.
you know, I said all the time. It's like, yeah, Jewish women, yeah, anxiety. Not that we're the only ones, but like, it's
Well, that's related. I mean, you're joking, and I get it, and that's connected though to a serious topic about the pharmaceutical industry is very good at marketing their products. Very, very good. And so a lot of people who prescribe those products are not familiar with science-based treatments, talking treatments for anxiety and depression and things like that. So a lot of folks who are currently taking medication for things like anxiety or mood may not need them, emphasis on the phrase may not, if they got science-based talking treatments. But there's nobody out there marketing that, because there's no national organization with that kind of budget, or if they have it, it's really tiny.
Yeah, and today's world, unfortunately, is give me a pill to take to fix it all, to make it better. You know,
Yeah.
And it's hard because it's something that we, you know, it's mental health. It's part of us, and yes, but we're not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. It's just the way we work, and we need to understand how our brain works and how to adjust for when things get, like, for example, kids with ADHD. I always say ADHD, autism, anxiety is usually with both of those, you know, because the disability causes other issues, which brings on the anxiety. And if you learn how to address the other issues, or, you know, how to desensitize yourself. I don't want to say desensitize, it's not the right word, but how to handle when you get overstimulated, then there's less anxiety. Because you know, right?
Attributed to, you know, understanding it, like if I thought my vision problem was about my effort, or about how I was raised, or whether I had caffeine today or not, or sugar or not, and I just need to give it a better try. I need to work harder, maybe brighter lights and all that stuff. It's not going to take me long till I start feeling there's something seriously wrong with me, defect in me, because I've misunderstood the nature of the problem, that this is a physical problem that can be addressed quite nicely through physical intervention. Now, ADHD, of course, is a brain-based problem that needs both medical and non-medical interventions usually. So in that way, the analogy breaks down. But the idea that there's something, I just need to work harder, or my parents need to parent better, or the teachers need to teach better, as opposed to recognizing with ADHD, it's a biological problem.
Right. And that I see that all the time, especially, you know, with ADHD, and, you know, oh, well, they're just spacing out. They're not paying attention. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, people don't realize, like, yes, spacing out, you know, we used to call it, oh, they're a daydreamer. Well, no, that's a brain issue that's there, and it's how their brain works. And in some ways it's good. You know, there are some times that it's good to have ADHD, because there are certain things that kids with, you know, adults and kids with ADHD can do that neurotypical might not be able to do, because of how the brain works. And it's always interesting for me how our society looks at things like that, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, if you're smart in math or not smart in math, or smart in English, you're considered smarter than everybody else. If you know, and why? You know what I mean? Like with the ADHD, it's like, okay, you can't pay attention as much, but you're brilliant at something else. And the way our society forces everybody into, you need to know this stuff to be considered smart. And if you don't know this stuff, then you're not, right?
We all have top strengths, Francis. And by that, I mean, you have to travel far and wide to find another human being as good at that thing as you. One of my mathematician professor friends, when I reviewed the model, why I said it's true of everybody, at least who doesn't have serious brain damage. That's true of everybody. He called it a mathematical certitude that we all have top of the bell curve strengths. The tragedy is that many of us don't understand that or know what those strengths are or aren't using them. So if you put in front of me a human being and you tell me this person knows their top strengths, where you have to travel far and wide to find someone as good at that thing as them, and they're using them regularly in their professional and vocational life, including at that school, I'll show you a person who frequently has electricity flowing through their veins in their daily life. And certainly that's true of folks who have been diagnosed with ADHD. With proper treatment, there's no goal in the universe that someone cannot reach who has ADHD.
Right.
Because of ADHD, yeah.
Right, because of the ADHD. And that's one of the frustrating things with schools, because again, you're expected to be, this is how you school and this is how you smart and this is, all of that stuff. And then it's our society, as good as America is with education, better than some countries, it still has a long way to go when it comes to these other mental health and looking at kids' strengths. Because that's one of the things I hate on IEPs. You do the present levels of performance. Technically, that should have the child's strengths. Often it doesn't. It goes into the weaknesses. But, my thing is that if you have the strengths and the weaknesses to develop your goals should be built on, this is the strength, and this is the strength that we're using to bring up the weakness.
It's so important. In any evaluation I do on a human being across the lifespan, or any evaluation that I supervise, any folks I've trained, assessing for strengths, articulating the strengths, using the strengths as fulcrums for advancement and change is just so important. The science of positive psychology needs to be integrated more actively into the science of clinical psychology. And that's the science of meaning and joy. And boy, there's so much that's known about how to promote meaning and joy across the human condition.
Right. Yeah. It's, I look back I do a lot of personal stuff, and I look back at my, I was brought up thinking I wasn't smart because I couldn't spell and my grammar was iffy. I remember in high school, Dr. Hudson, I think his name, a science teacher, biology, I think, told me that my writing was off and I didn't organize my writing well. So that's I brought up thinking that I couldn't write well and I couldn't spell and all that other stuff. But meanwhile, when I finally changed careers as a former teacher and went to law school, I was on law review. Well, clearly I know how to write, clearly, but the way society brought me up, I didn't think I could. But my brain worked different in that analytical way that, guess what? Spelling doesn't matter when you can do the analysis, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a frustrating thing because I grew up thinking I wasn't smart enough to go to law school for the longest time. And I don't want that. That's part of where Shefter Law started and Stress-Free IEP is I don't want other kids to go through that. They're smart in their way. Everybody is smart. Let's find how to capitalize on that and how to bring it to the forefront so that they know, it's okay that you don't know this because you know that.
Francis, you just articulated one of the things that I use the term living life on the high road, that people living life on the high road do. I mentioned know the top strengths, use them, but also a lot of people wonder, what are kids or teens, what should I do for a vocation? What should I do for a job? I don't know. You just articulated the formula. Figure out your top strengths, and then ask yourself, what bugs me about the world? What's wrong about the world? And then what vocation will allow you to use your top strengths to address that? Now you don't have a job where I'm going to just get by 40 hours so I can do what I really want to do on the weekends, leading a life of silent desperation, as Thoreau called it. You've got a life where the years whiz by because it's so filled with meaning and joy, and the purpose of your life is so important because you're using those top strengths to address an important problem. As long as people then don't suffer from self-doubt, I have an acronym I use called WAIT, which stands for Who Am I To? Who am I to take on this problem? So if someone can avoid that, like you seem to be avoiding it, then the outcomes can be inspiring.
Yeah. And avoiding it because my business coach has been amazing for 3.5 years, but that's it. It's the mindset, because we all have the imposter syndrome, like, why am I any better than anybody else? And it doesn't have to be better. I'm not better than anybody else, but I'm really good at what I do. And I have knowledge base that a lot of other attorneys don't have because of my special ed teaching background and stuff. And I've got to remember that I provide a service that can help everybody. Can I help everybody? No. Some aren't a good match, but I can get out there and help as many families as possible to help their kids find those strengths and to build on them so that they can succeed in the world to the best of their ability. And it just brought up, yeah.
I'm sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say, like, my daughter the other night, actually, I think it was last night, was saying that she wants to be a multi-billionaire. And I'm like, good, go for it, kid. And my husband Seth says, okay, so find something you enjoy doing and figure out how to make money doing it. And that's exactly what it is, right? That's how you live your high road.
I mean, what I usually, when I get into the weeds of vocational counseling, I follow that script I just mentioned. And I said, okay, now maybe you have choices. What's your cost benefit ratio on years of education versus what your income will be? Unfortunately, though, the income is usually front loaded into that deliberation as opposed to being very important, obviously. But that the correlation between happiness and income levels out once someone's basic life needs have been met. That figure varies. Last time I looked at the science, it was about $75,000 a year. That once you make that amount, there's really no correlation between income and happiness. It's only when you're below that threshold, geez, I can't pay my medical bills, or I can't live in a safe community, where income is critically important. But yeah, we all like having money. That's nice, as long as it's like sequenced correctly in the vocational deliberation.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I know what my dad used to say all the time, like, rich or poor, it's always nicer to, cry in a Mercedes than it is in a Pinto, See,
I would say, what are you crying about, dude? Right. Like, maybe you don't have to be crying so much.
Right. But it's true. Like, it's nice to have comforts in life. And, that was his thing. He worked hard for his comforts in life and had them. And yeah. So like ADHD, I know it's so underdiagnosed in girls, because usually girls don't have the hyperactivity, and almost everybody associates ADD with ADHD, that they have to be bouncing off the walls, hyperactivity, and can't focus on anything. What are some of the signs, like, that parents could be like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that is the issue of my child? Like, are there signs that they can look for?
So the founder of the Chesapeake Center is Dr. Kathleen Nadeau, and she is arguably one of the top international experts in this area that you're talking about. So sometime you may want to invite her on to talk about girls, and also she's developed a specialty in ADHD later in the lifespan. I'll share with you my understanding, and of course I just want to defer to her wonderful knowledge on this. I just love listening to her talk about this topic. The top referral source for mental health problems when you're a kid is annoying an adult. Nothing gets you referred faster than annoying. So the most prevalent disorder in children is anxiety disorders. They follow a distant third or fourth in referral rates because anxious kids don't tend to bug adults, right? And so girls are much less likely to express their ADHD through overt behaviors that annoy teachers, annoy their parents. They can more likely express what we think of as hyperactivity through verbal means. They're also much more socialized at a very young age to not be pushy, to be agreeable. In Western cultures, girls are conditioned to be small, pretty, and agreeable. And so if that conditioning is successful in girls, they're just not going to bother adults. There's also problems with how we clinicians sometimes evaluate, because to put it, to kind of reduce it to a simple discussion, we say that if a kid has the symptoms more than 93% of their peer group, that's probably signaling a diagnosis. But if the peer group is not separated out, boys and girls, it's going to mean identifying fewer girls. So let's say we say this is 50th percentile physical activity, across kids. And we say, okay, here's the 93rd percentile. I'm sorry, let's say that's this 50th percentile activity for boys. Girls are going to be under that figure, So it's going to take more of the symptom for a girl to reach that threshold than it will for a boy to reach that threshold. I might be not explaining that very well in the tight conflict of time, but the point is that has to be sex-based norms when clinicians are doing these evaluations. And often
I know, I was going to say that makes so much sense, because a lot of times, and I hate the expression, but boys will be boys. Boys are expected to be active and hyperactive and all that other stuff, and I remember like people saying when they see a girl that's more active, oh, well, she grew up with a lot of brothers, not that maybe there's something going on, but like that was her role model as, how to behave.
Yeah. And, I think when the clinician is really being exacting and helpful, they're looking at whether a particular behavior is causing problems in a child's life, regardless of any judgment of how normative it may be, is it causing problems is a key question.
Right. And that's where the education department comes in, because a lot of times schools like to say, well, there's no educational impact because the child's getting straight A's. But that's not an end all be all.
Right.
Because, right, like what they're doing at home or what they're doing in the background and stuff, they're not available for learning if their entire body and being is making them sit still, and be focused, right?
I've had several adults who I think are brilliant. They've had successful careers. They're later in life, and they've just always wondered if they have ADHD. And it's because of their brilliance that they've been able to compensate in various ways. And the cases are just running through my mind of determining, yes, they do, trying medication, and then having a kind of a two-prong reaction. First, complete euphoria. I had one woman say to me, come in a couple weeks after starting a stimulant, I was able to sit and read in my bathtub for a half hour. Dr. Dave, you don't understand. Like, I've never been able to read for longer than 10 minutes. I could have kept going, but the kids were banging on the bathroom door and I had to get up and take care of them. 3 weeks later, when I saw her, sadness, existential sadness. What could have been? I wanted to be a nurse. I thought I was stupid. And so I didn't even go into that. And now I don't feel like I've got the time, given my other commitments in life, to go. What could have been had this been recognized? And I think one of the reasons why you and I do this kind of public education is we want as few children singing that song as possible.
Exactly. That's so true, because that's what shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's the same thing as like the older generation, that women weren't allowed to, or they couldn't. And, if they were allowed to, where would they have been and what would they have been able to do?
Yeah.
And then, and it's frustrating, the IEPs, a lot of people think of it as, as you're stupid, or you need extra help and there's something wrong with you and all of that, when it's like, no, as adults, we look for support. We don't know how to, especially attorneys, we don't know how to do a certain area of practice of law. We go take an education on it. We go read a book on it, so like having extra support, there's nothing wrong with it. And we need, like, society needs to change that mindset.
Here's the thing. I love a quote from Stephen King to make this point. It's in the introduction to The Shining. Ghosts are real. Monsters are real too. They live inside us, and sometimes they win. What I take that to mean is having battles within ourselves is ubiquitous. Everybody who's walking around getting anything done in life is battling themselves. If you put in front of me, Francis, someone and guaranteed me that person is not battling themselves, I would know they're in some very dire circumstance. Anybody who's getting things done in life, family, work, battling themselves. Now, the nature of those battles number like stars in the sky. You know, it could be gambling or not yelling or being faithful or, anxious, ADHD, whatever. We have to stop this thing where we have the public aura, the social media aura of us, and then the truth of us. The more we can talk about the truth of us, and I can see, you know what, I've got 3 internal battles I wage, me, David Palmiter. The more I talk about those, maybe other people can start to own they do too. And maybe those who go for treatment are going, hey, I'm just like every other cat walking around. I battle myself. Well, yeah, that's what being human is. And why not get some expert help at making you more effective at that battle? Because there are some lean, mean healing machines out there who are ready to be of help.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I'm thinking back, like when I went through fertility treatment with my kids, when I found a support group, it was so nice to be able to be like, to get it, somebody else that gets it. Because if you haven't been through fertility treatment, you're not going to get it because it's just, it's just such a different animal. And so like having other people. And then when I was in my 20s, there was a phenomenal psychologist that did a women's group. And she was very particular, and it was like 8 people and very particular that we didn't know each other in the outside world. But it was so amazing for all of us to see all these 7 other people, professional women in different stages of life. Guess what? They're not perfect. They've got shit going on too,
Anybody who's showing that snow globe image is out to make a point that I would suggest to them is meaningless to make. And my wife and I went through 3 years of infertility too. So I know what you're talking about. 20% of couples go through that. But everybody's going through something. And instead of, trying to project this snow glow image, what Clark Griswold would pursue in the Lampoon family vacation movies, let's let that go and realize that considered chaos is a part of anybody's life who's living well. Show me a life where the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and I will show you someone likely not living life on the high road. Anybody who is, it's a bumbling and tumbling cacophony of joy, mess, tears, inspiration, and exhaustion. That's what high road living is. And that means I've got internal battles to wage. And how am I doing with those is an important question.
Right. And the internal battles are a lot easier with assistance from a therapist, right?
There's so much science, that's why you and I invest this time in public education, to try to light a candle in the darkness, because there's so much science that's so helpful. We just don't have the marketing dollars anybody's invested to make it available to the public. The amount of needless suffering. I mean, I could go to tears over it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And this is, for adults and kids, I know a lot of people that as adults found out they had ADHD, and it was just like they went, oh my God. Like everything went, like their life just made sense, while they were
One of my clients talked about, she felt like a horse, the blinders were off. And now she saw a totally different reality.
Yeah, like especially the 2E, like now that's the biggest thing now, that twice exceptional, is that a lot of our very, very bright kids and adults have an extra like ADHD or something. And I know, like I've heard people say, like, I thought something was wrong with me because it took me twice as long to get to the same place as other people. And they never had the answers. And then when the ADHD got diagnosed, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And for any teachers watching, I find done a lot of in-services for teachers over the years. They're overwhelmed with what they're asked to do, with shrinking resources. And many I found have forgotten their power. They have tremendous power to make a difference in this area, and it needn't take a lot of time. In one study, looking at adult ADHD who are surviving as adults, they asked them, what What do you think helped you to thrive? On the short list was some teacher believed in me. And they couldn't say what the teacher taught. Some of them didn't even remember what the class was, but they remembered the impact. And if anyone who's watching wants to see more on that, there's a wonderful YouTube video. If you just search Mr. Jenkins, drummer, there's a story of a boy whose life was changed by a few minutes with a teacher, a positive comment. My son, I've got 2 daughters and a son in the middle. They're all in their 20s. My son's named after a teacher who did that for me for just a little bit of time. But that little bit of time changed the course of my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll probably have the link to the show in the show notes. But yeah, it's so true how, like, I think back to teaching and I remember if I could make a difference, I used to say, if I could make a difference in one kid's life, then I've done my purpose. And thinking back, I think I did. I think there was one child in an alternative school, and I fought to get him back. So he was sent to the alternative school, and he did his time and trying to put him back into the regular school, and the regular school was trying to not let him back in. And I fought hard for him because I'm like, no, this kid doesn't belong in this alternative school. Not that any kid does, but it was just, this kid needs to. And I remember he came back and visited me, and he was like an AB student, and he was going to go be a physical therapist. And it was just like, that's why I taught, to help those kids do the difference. And why I went to law school was I felt like I couldn't do that anymore because society, the red tape, administration, central office, all that other putting on us as a teacher is that we had to be in such little boxes of what we can and can't do. It wasn't making a difference in kids' lives anymore.
I bet you, too, with the firearm film coming off you, that you had that kind of difference in more than one kid's life. They just haven't told you. They're out there.
Yeah, probably. And it's, I had a friend of mine, I'm going to give a shout out to her, Julie Hart, who was like my first friend when I started teaching. She used to put hearts everywhere. And she said to me one time, she just wanted the hearts out there and the kids to associate with hearts because we taught in the inner city. So if the kids went on the wrong path and they saw a heart, that they would think of me and hopefully go on the right path, which I thought was so amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like little things like that teachers could do. It wasn't anything extra that she did, but she just made sure hearts were everywhere, right?
It's amazing how brief it can. When I think of Father Gannon's, and I try to think, it's massive. How many minutes did you really spend one-on-one with me? It wasn't a lot.
Yeah. It's just taking that extra minute and anybody that watches my show or any of my videos, like I say, I get it. Teachers have too much on their plate. I get it 100%, but it's remember why you went into teaching. As we all joke around, it's not for the summers off and the money, but it's because we want to help and make a difference in children's lives. So take that step back and look at how you can do that, right?
One of the aspirations I try to have in my life is to not keep any positive thought I have about a person living only in my head and to just give voice to it. And the more of us that do that, especially in this case, teachers, the more we're going to have that kind of influence that we're hoping for. Yeah,
that's so true. It's just, and I heard something similar. I don't remember where it was, but like, I try to make it a point. Like if I see a woman wearing a really nice dress, I'll say like, I love your dress, like just little things like that. You don't know how that little comment can make such a difference potentially in that child's life, or that adult's life or anything.
I wrote a brief story about, because I refer to this as a superpower. We all have a superpower. So I had in a former phase of my career, I directed doctoral internships in the Chicago area. And that means you're working 50 to 60 hours a week for grocery money. So it's hard. And I had 4 of these supervisees. Early in the year, I wrote on a little sticky note, Peter, good job, good report, keep it up. Put hardly any effort into it, didn't really think about it much. Several months later, Peter's out sick and I need something in his desk. So I reached out and I said, is it okay with you if I go into your desk for a moment? He said, sure, go ahead. I opened up the desk. There's my little sticky note laminated, right? Aww. And the visual image I had in my head I felt like I was Superman and I barely get out of my Clark Kent outfit. Like I don't use my power.
Yeah.
The power of gratitude, the power of appreciation of each other. It is a major superpower, and we can all have that Superman, Superwoman experience by using it more often. Write a gratitude letter. Pick someone you have some gratitude for. Write 300 words, handwritten. It's more intimate. Schedule an appointment and read it to them. If that doesn't feel like you're just injected joy juice into your veins, I don't know what would.
Right. I like that the gratitude letters. It reminds me of, and I don't remember the story or something with the teachers did that. Like at the end of the school year, have every student write something nice about one of the other students, about all of the other students. And then the kids got like their bag of things at the end of the year, which is so nice because like giving them like, and I remember like them telling stories about like one kid was like, wow, I didn't even know that made a difference to other kids. But several kids had said something that he did.
All of us. Be careful and disguise this, but I just recently had a highly accomplished, highly educated adult tell me about how his work they did a version of that and how impactful the 2-sentence note he got from one of his colleagues was. So we're all like that. We all need that.
We all need that. Yeah, we all need that.
Let's try to be the change we want in the world, this is said, and express gratitude, let people know about the positive thoughts we have about them.
Yeah. And that's something in supplementary aids on all IEPs that I try to get put in there is like they always, they like praise often. But what I always put in there in the clarify location of manner is what does that look like? Like how? Because some kids just given a thumbs up work. Some kids need to hear the words, great job. Some kids need a sticker. Like it's different for everyone, but everybody wants praise and everybody does better with praise.
Robert Brooks from Harvard, he's retired now. He had a great idea that I use on my school staffings. His idea was let's put the kid on display for a unique and positive contribution to the school. The kid who takes, opens and closes the door when the kids come in. The kid that reads the announcement. I had one principal buy a hamster just so that the kid I was serving could take care of it. A lot of these kids are already on display who aren't being treated. They're on display for a unique and negative contribution. So let's put them on display for unique and positive. I had one boy I was treating probably 6 months, and the school doing this did him more good than I did in probably 10 visits. He got to carry, this is a parochial school, he got to carry in the baby Jesus at the Christmas ceremony. I mean, it's hard to lose track of how, it's easy to lose track, of how impactful putting someone on display for a positive contribution can be.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It makes so much sense. And every child, if you can't find good in every single child, I don't want to say there's something wrong with you because I don't like using that word, but like there's good in everybody. I always say that. Like my dad said rose-colored glasses, but yeah.
The fact. A harsh judgment reflects a lack of information or a distortion of the truth 100% of the time. If we had more time, I could prove that, like someone proves a math equation. I do it with my clients. Whether I'm directing harshness towards myself or someone else, 100% of the time, it represents either a distortion of the truth or a lack of information.
That's so true.
We should think of it like psychological body odor, harshness. Like any of us, if we get the sense that we smell, we leap into action. We don't go, I stink, that's okay. We should think of harshness in the same way. Like if I have it towards myself or others, let's do some work so that I can see the capital T truth of myself or this other person and disempower the harshness.
Yeah. Like everybody's going through something. It makes me think about like when somebody, does something nasty for, it's like who peed in his Wheaties, to date myself, we used to say, but like things like that. But it's like, you know what? But there's truth to that. Like that person is not naturally a mean, obnoxious person. They're having a bad day. You don't know what struggles they're having. behind that, right?
One phase of my career, I was getting on planes a couple times a month for training, flying coach. And when you fly that much, you really hate flying. And I'm checking into the airport. I'm in Scranton, going to Allentown, then to Chicago. And the guy's explaining to me as I'm checking in, we've had to cancel the first leg of your flight for lack of passengers. Don't worry, we're going to drive you to Allentown. You're still going to make your flight. As he's explaining all this, about 6 stations down, there's this woman in a business suit screaming at the top of her lungs, MF this, I'm going to take this and stick it up that. And me and my guy could hardly get our business done because she was so loud and obnoxious. So we're done. I said, wait, you're driving us. Well, how many other of us are there? He goes, oh, there's just 2 of you. I said, well, who's the other person? He does that. Now it's my turn to curse, right? But I figure, okay, I'm going to get in the car and I'm not going to be paying attention to this person. I'm not on the clock. I don't need to deal with this. By the time we got halfway through our trip, I hear this story about how 5 years earlier, she and her husband had purchased a honeymoon for her daughter and their new son-in-law. This was in Thailand. The wedding was on the beach. Her daughter and their new son-in-law got into a raft to the honeymoon they had paid for, were never heard from again. They couldn't even find the bodies. Wow. They invested every psychological and monetary resource to try to at least figure out what happened. It broke them up as a couple. And she's explained to me she's on her way to Chicago also. She's a lawyer. She's going to give a presentation at a workshop. And I'm there thinking, I don't think I could be functioning nearly as well as you if that happened to me. And I felt a deep embarrassment for the thoughts I had in my head in the airport about her. That was a turning moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's the truth. It's like you don't know what struggles other people have been through, and what yes. And there's the triggering. You don't know what triggers and why. Some people, like a certain dress cut might trigger something, and why does that trigger something? Because it's something that happened in childhood or something else. But it's so true of looking at Wow, sorry, just thinking through like just
to cause pain, you have to be in pain. Right. That's exactly what you said. I agree, Francis.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring us back a little bit for ADHD. What do you have anything like tips for parents on what to do at home? Because like one of the things, so my youngest has ADHD, and it's so frustrating because like, Esther, go upstairs and brush your teeth. 2 minutes later, she's playing with the dog. Esther, did you go upstairs and brush your teeth? Oh, yeah. And like 2 minutes later, she's in her room with her Barbie dolls. Like she just, oh yeah, wait, there's something over there. Like, do you have pointers of like, what do you do at home when you have like a kid that just like that, because she's young, how do you help them get to doing what they need to be doing?
So a good behavioral program can do that. And that's akin to saying, a good bicycle can help with transportation. There's so many different kinds of bikes and sizes, fanciness of them. And so too it is with behavioral programs. But I find that can be a big help. One thing that I can say, and I say for every parent through the door, certainly would be the case with ADHD, to do an hour a week of special time where a parent is only given undivided attention, giving specific, proportion, and authentic praise. Those 3 verbs, subdivisions are each important: specific, proportionate, authentic praise, and expression affection. So it's not quality time. I mean, quality time is a good thing. If we had more of it in America, we probably would have fewer prisons. It's a good thing. But special time is much more intense in its focus. I have a 11 to 13-ish minute video on YouTube. If folks just enter my name and special time, there's an instruction on how to do it. I've made it a subspecialty area of mine is what parenting practices promote resilience in kids. And this is the most important of the 10 that I list in my parenting book, special time. It's incredible how sort of non-dramatic it is when you're doing it, but how incredibly powerful it is, impact on the child. One brief story, I had a dad once, this was in the 80s, and he was he was paid $500,000 a year in the 80s to solve his company's problems. And he couldn't get his 13-year-old ADHD to do her homework. He was a single dad. So the first intervention I did was his special time. And he did it on faith. He's like, kind of like, oh, we look forward to talking about the homework, but fine, I'll do it. I came back the following week and asked him what it was like. Oh, it's fine, it's good. But really looking forward to talking about the homework. So I asked the 13-year-old what it was like for her. And like a lot of teens, she said, I don't know. So I said, well, and this was in the heyday of Michael Jackson, and she was obsessed with him before all Michael Jackson's troubles. So I said, sitting in front row of a Michael Jackson concert as a 10 and eating a warm cupcake as a 1, what was this like with your dad? Tearfully, 10. It was a 10. Now, this man was already doing plenty of quality time, taking her extracurriculars, family vacations, but this mere introduction of special time made her feel like she was in the front row of a Michael Jackson concert. And he said to me later, I could not see that on her face. I could not see it in her manner. But it's just the top resilience promoting parenting strategy we have, I think.
Yeah, no, and I've heard that for behavior also. And my husband and I need to get back to it, but we call it me time, where you spend 15 minutes, each of us one-on-one with the child, with each kid, and they get to do whatever they want. Our phones are away. Yep. They get our full attention. And even if you do it twice a week, unbelievable the difference in behavior, because kids want attention, good or bad. And if they're not getting it good, they're going to get it from the bad way.
I prescribe an hour a week, because the myth that many of we parents suffer from, or we tell ourselves, is I'm going to do my self-care. I'm going to do my relationship care with my partner and my kid care, relationship kid care, after my life's obligations have been met. But in most of the households I work with, where there's working parents, that time's as mythical as the unicorn. There is no time left over. And so any relationship maintenance and self-care maintenance that's based on unicorn time is destined to have all kinds of problems with it. So you and your husband have discovered that by the investment of the time you're giving, where you're not falling prey to unicorn time. And I'm sure that means that some weeks there's something very important that just is not getting done. But it's not going to be the care of your child that's in the not getting done category.
Right. And the mental health of our child, which is, I say all the time, is I don't care about, I do, but education, all that other stuff, school, everything else, the mental health of my child is what's most important. Because if you don't have good mental health and a good self-worth, all the education in the world is not going to help you.
We're so crushed for time. It's just crazy.
Always. Yeah, that's one of our other things with society. Like, we're praised for being like, oh my God, I'm so busy. Oh my God, I'm so busy. When somebody asks how you're doing, and it's just, why is it not okay to be like, you know what? I'm chilling today. Like I'm good. Taking that mental break of not, I have this to do, right? Because we need it too. So I'm sure it's mental health helps us to take that hour a week. I love it, an hour a week that we're just focusing on our child and our family. And that gives us what we need too.
Date night a week makes divorce obsolete.
Interesting. I'll have to tell my husband that. Date night a week. That makes sense. It does. It does, though. I remember when my kids go to Hebrew school during the school year, we were, for a while, doing Sundays was like our time together, because the kids were at Hebrew school, and then we had, 2 hours that we could just do, whether we go for a walk, whether we watch a movie, whatever it is, clean out the garage, whatever. Well, not we have a garage, but the basement, whatever it is, the two of us do something together. And that makes sense, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to tell them that. We need to start doing that more. This has been so awesome. I just realized the time. I'm like, I could talk with you all day. Like all day, right? This has been so awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Helpful, I think. Yeah, and I think so helpful. So if people want to get in touch with you or the Chesapeake Center, like, what's the best way, and when should people?
Our CEO has her husband has just done such a tremendous job with our website. It's ChesapeakeADD.com. You can reach any of us through that vehicle. And I'm happy to give my cell phone number too. Should I put it in the chat? Is that the best thing to do? Does everybody see that?
Sure, you want to put it? Yeah. Go ahead. Well, no,
Yeah.
everybody does not see the chat, but we'll get it posted with when we post. Like, we're live now, but when we post it on everything else, we'll put it in there.
Yeah, it's part of my meaning making. Folks can feel free to reach out to that number too.
Awesome. Yeah. And you provide, I think you said you do assessments also and therapy. So you do the whole
Here at
gamut.
Chesapeake, we try to be a one-stop shop for ADHD. So testing, coaching, therapy, medication, all of it, all in one house. And if you don't mind, we have offices in Bethesda, Fulton, Silver Spring, and just very recently down in Florida, where I know you have offices too. And that location in Florida is Ponte Vedra.
I don't have offices there. I'm just licensed there. I'm barred there. That's why we provide. Yeah, that's why we can provide legal services. We just have a office in Rockville now, but with everything being virtual these days, I can practice nationwide for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, so that is awesome. We will put all that in the show notes. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Thank you for being such a wonderful host, Francis. It was good to meet you.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Francis Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Francis through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.